Hello, Algebra 2. We're going to take a look at our 8.5a samples in preparation for our 8.5a quiz. This is where we will be graphing equations of the hyperbola, include the vertices, foci, and asymptotes in your graph. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at our first sample now. We are to graph y squared over 9 minus x squared over 25 equals 1. So that is the standard form of an equation for a hyperbola. We're going to notice that the y comes first. That y squared is first here, so that means that we will have a vertical transverse axis, and that means that the branches of our hyperbola will open up on that y-axis, that vertical axis. So let's see how we get the numbers that we need to know where to draw the branches of that hyperbola. So remember, for a hyperbola, underneath whatever fraction is first, whether it's x squared or y squared, that denominator will be your a squared. So a squared is 9, the square root of 9 is 3, so a is 3. The second fraction, the one that has a minus sign in front of it, that second fraction will be where you'll find the b value in the denominator. That will be b squared in the denominator. B squared is 25, the square root of 25 is 5. So you've got your a and your b numbers. Now let's figure out our c, which is going to be the number we're going to use for our focus. So remember, for hyperbola, that the Pythagorean theorem is the relationship between your a, b, and c. So c squared equals a squared plus b squared. Plug in your numbers for a squared and b squared, 9 and 25. Add them up, get 34. Your c squared is 34. The square root of c squared is c, which is the square root of 34, which is about 5.8. Okay, so now we're ready to make our graph. We know our vertices are going to be 0, 3, and 0, negative 3 because the transverse axis is vertical. So these need to be on the vertical or y-axis in this case. The focus points, of course, will be on the same axis as the vertices. So since we found out that the value of c is 5.8, our foci will be 0, 5.8, and 0, negative 5.8. So we're going to go ahead and plot those points. There's our 0, 3, and 0, negative 3. Here's our focus point, 0, 5.8, and 0, negative 5.8. Now we need to put down the values that we discovered for b, and those, of course, will be on the opposite axis as the vertices and the foci. So that's where we know the 5 has to come in the x-coordinate and the negative 5 in the x-coordinate. So 5, 0, and negative 5, 0 is where we're going to place our b values so that we can create our rectangle through our a and our b numbers and draw our asymptotes through the corners of that rectangle. And then we can open the two branches of our hyperbola here up and opening down. So we open up and we open down on the vertex, and the branches of that hyperbola, of course, will approach the asymptotes but actually never reach them. And that concludes our graphing of our hyperbola, where we included the vertices, the foci, and the asymptotes. Sample 2. Well, sample 2 will be the other type of graph for our hyperbola, where we actually have branches of the hyperbola opening left and right. We're going to know that in this case that the branches are going to open left and right because the x comes first in our equation here. So we see x squared first, we see the y squared subtracted off. That means that we'll have a horizontal transverse axis, and that means that the branches will open on the horizontal axis, which in this case is the x-axis. Okay, let's find our numbers so we can figure out exactly where those branches will open left and right. A squared is 64, the square root of 64 is 8, so a is 8. B squared is 16, that comes right off of the denominators from our equation. So b squared is 16, the square root of 16 is 4, so b is 4. Using our relationship c squared equals a squared plus b squared, we're able to plug in our a squared and b squared, find out c squared is 80, and the square root of 80 is approximately 8.9. Okay, so we know our vertices are going to lie on the horizontal axis. That'll be the x-axis in this case, 8, 0, and negative 8, 0. Here they are, our foci at 8.90 and negative 8.90, and that comes from our c number. Of course, they will be on the same axis as our vertices. And then our b numbers that we arrived at up here, b is 4, those will be on the y-axis in this case, and we can use the values that we receive for a or b to create our rectangle, draw our asymptotes through that rectangle, and then from there open the branches of our hyperbola left and right such that those branches will approach the asymptotes but never touch or cross over the asymptotes. And that concludes our samples work for this lesson. It's time for you to make sure this is recorded in your lesson. Study it and then go ahead and move on to the quiz for this lesson, and we'll see you next time.